Lecturer and author Brené Brown said, "I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship." Isn't it interesting that when we feel seen, heard and valued, the energy between conversations shifts? When we feel valued, there is a sense of appreciation and acceptance. There is a deeper understanding found in the similarities, which creates a connection of being understood, and being understood leads to better rapport. But how does one create this connection? How does one create rapport with others so that we can live in a way that serves both as opposed to just one? And why is this so important in communication? Join me on this journey as we speak to international speaker and trainer Helen Kemp as she shares how connection, skills and knowledge we have acquired can be used to add value and deepen connections and relationships when building rapport with those around us. Hello everybody, I'm Jatinder Palhal. Welcome to another Digital Rapport Master Series. And today I'm super excited because we have an international speaker all the way from Australia, a human behavior expert, Helen Kemp. Helen, firstly, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and taking the time to do this interview. Just so people get to know a bit more about you, just feel free to tell them what you do, how long you've been doing it, and what kind of things you're currently up to.
Sure. So I have a business called Optimum Thinking, and we actually work with people to help them clear emotional blocks that are sort of getting in the way of them getting what they want in their lives. So we work with all different people from all different walks of life, from families right through to people as CEOs in companies, and also we do work both with individuals and with teams. So it's really mindset coaching is, I guess, how you'd call it overall. We call the company Optimum Thinking because we had to discover a new language, I guess, from the point of view of not focusing on positive thinking, like from the 80s movement. A lot of people think it's all about positive thinking and a happy life, but actually appreciating that both positive and negative thinking serve. And when we use those two both as resources, we needed a new word for what we're aiming at because there wasn't really one. So we use the concept of optimum thinking, and that's why we call the business optimum thinking as well. So we like to help people learn to chase a fulfilled life rather than a happy life, because that's something we can get. If we chase a happy life, it's a delusion, because none of us can stay happy. Have you ever managed to stay happy all the time?
Not all the time.
No. So we're always going to have both sides because we're meant to. People just forget that the negative thinking is actually what helps us appreciate what we don't want in our lives. And that's equally valuable to the positive thinking that is actually giving us the feedback that that is something we want in our life.
Mm-hmm. Right. How long have you been in the field for?
I've been studying human behaviour fairly full on for about 15 years, but prior to that I've been in education my whole life. So my background is in secondary education and then in the organisational development side of educational institutions. So that was where I got into organisational culture and how people are operating is a reflection of what they're thinking and feeling. And I got really curious about how we could help people come up with a better way to work their way through conflicts that meant you didn't lose relationships over some conflict, because it's usually just behaviour, but people may exaggerate the meaning of that behaviour and then end relationships that don't necessarily need ending, and it becomes unproductive as well. So it's about getting people to have that sense that their workplace is more fulfilling, their relationships in their family life are more fulfilling, rather than spending your life trying to change other people, or worse still, spend your life worrying about what other people think of you. So it's a new framework to actually look at your life through.
That's really interesting, because today we're going to be talking about the topic of rapport.
Yes.
So just to begin the conversation, I mean, there's loads of things you said in there which we can come back to as well. But just initially, what are your kind of initial thoughts on what is rapport? How it works and why it's important, kind of thing. So what is rapport?
Yeah, so I guess I'd probably throw the question back to you and ask you what your definition is, so we can check we're on the same page. But I'll give you my definition first, and you can let me know if it feels right for you. So in my understanding of the concept of rapport. It's about how do we actually make a connection with other person or people, so it can be either with an individual or with a group, so that we help the other person feel safe and comfortable, so that we can then have open communication. So rapport, if you look at it as a science, there's a set of skills you can use and learn to develop, but then there's also that innate thing where we actually like people who are like us, so you're going to automatically gravitate towards people you perceive are similar to you. So does that kind of answer the question? Or
I mean that's is very similar to my understanding of rapport. Is actually something a mentor said to me once, saying that it's almost like everything in the universe is trying to be in rapport with each other. So like the chair is in rapport with the floor, for example, because there's a synchronicity or sort of balance going on, and then people are trying to always be connecting with one another and trying to connect and communicate with each other. So I think you covered what it is on that concept quite well in a way that I understand it to be as well. So if we were to go further into that, how important do you say rapport is when it comes to just communication or relationships or anything like that?
I think it's critical, because without some sense of rapport, relationships will break down. So you only establish a relationship through having some kind of rapport. So we all have at an unconscious level, we have a hierarchy of what we call hierarchy of life priorities that actually drive us. And because we like people who are like us, when we notice that we've got people who have a similar hierarchy of priorities, then we're going to automatically have a conversation around topics, for example, that we both relate to. So we're going to start matching each other, so we will feel like we're more in rapport. So as far as relationships go as well, there's all of the science of rapport, which if you have a look through, say, neuro-linguistic programming, some of the body language books, for example, there's a lot of ways you can actually create rapport by actually matching. For example, like we're both sitting here, we might both have our hands crossed or whatever, so that we feel more comfortable with each other because we're kind of mirroring each other. That goes down to the detail of whether we're making eye contact, for example. Like, we're not going to feel like we're in rapport if I'm looking at the ceiling while you're talking to me. So there's that sense of connection with our eyes. Also, I notice you're nodding as you're talking to me, so that sends that you're here, I'm being heard. So all of these things are kind of matching us as well, even down to the tone of our voice, the volume of our voice, and the pace of our voice. And in fact, Milton Erickson is a famous psychologist from last century. He was a master at even matching like the breathing, so the pace of someone's breathing and the depth of the breath. And he was able to actually match that and then move the person into a calmer state by actually slowing the breathing down with the person. He uses things like tapping. It might be tapping a pen or something to actually calm a really busy child to actually calming down to be able to communicate with them. So there's quite a science behind it, but from the point of view of communication and having a relationship, it's definitely holding the space for each other and having that awareness of each other is what communication's all about.
Right. How important do you think that rapport is in communication, in general life, when you are trying to connect with the other human beings? How important is it?
Do you mean how important is an understanding of it, or how important? Because I think it's something we do innately as human beings. I think we innately go into rapport if the person that we're wanting to interact with, we believe they have value to offer us. So we're going to automatically mimic them in order to try and connect with them. So I think we have a level of it that's quite instinctive if the person's got something that we perceive they really want. However, there's also that point where you might be going to meet strangers and you don't really know them, but you still want to settle in and try and connect with them to sort of feel part of the group. So there are skill sets you can actually consciously learn as well. So
that's very interesting, because I was going to ask you, what stage do you think that, because you said we inherently seem to have this ability that we want to mix in, match with people. What stage do you think that in your discovery of all of the work that you do, did you feel that rapport plays a big important part of that? When did you consciously start to think, okay, hang on a minute, there's something that needs to be done here?
Probably when I studied NLP. I think probably even doing psychology back in university before I became a teacher, we did learn some of the skills, but I don't think I was that conscious of them. I think when I studied NLP and we actually modelled it and practiced it was when you actually could feel the difference. So even just like, nodding for each other so we're being heard and making them and the actual acknowledgement that you understand.
Yeah.
And then right through to like really powerful things like repeating back my own language so that I actually know that you heard me. Things like that. They're conscious skills that I think when I studied NLP, I really saw the value of some of those language skills that I hadn't actually seen before. Good communicators, I think, just do it innately but through just learned behaviour. Like you practice it and you go, oh, when I said that, they responded. So I think there's almost like that intuitive way that we develop them.
Yeah.
If our intention is to connect, I think then we become very good problem solvers and we work out how to do that. The thing with NLP is it was actually developed from watching people like Milton Erickson and Virginia Satir's, another famous psychologist, actually watching them and modelling and actually breaking down their methodology into a science and then put it as a step-by-step process, and then that's how we actually learn NLP now. So the people who actually started that, actually helped people understand at a more conscious level what was going on.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of really good communicators who just take those skills on at an unconscious level. I think with a teaching background, I had 30 children with clay in their hands. There's a point where I had to actually get rapport rather than just be a dictator, or I would actually really get burnt out energetically. If you had to keep like controlling people externally, that's very exhausting compared to actually building rapport and getting to know people. Then that's going to be a much easier flow in any group or relationship.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you're saying that there's skills that you learn across on your journey, which you kind of subconsciously pick up on, saying that works, that didn't work, and things like that. And then you said they're really good leaders who utilize the tools and actually just get on with people. So sometimes you get people who just seem to get into instant rapport with people. How do you think that works based on what you've just said then?
I think it comes back to the hierarchy of individual life priorities I mentioned. So we call that a HILP, or the master key. So that actual hierarchy, if someone has connecting with people in whatever form they're looking for, it could be family or it could be work, very high, then they will tend to be the ones who from a very young age are almost studying human behaviour. Whereas another person who might have, say, technology very high on their HILP or their hierarchy of life priorities, they will tend to not really notice people as much because they may be focused on computer games or tinkering with technology, and they'll kind of be in their own little world. So it depends on what you see as a priority as to where you're developing your skill set. And from the brain research I've read about, it's also where you're developing the type of brain that's going to connect more at that emotional level as well. So if you're a more mathematical thinking person or more technologically oriented person, you tend to develop a brain that actually supports that.
Right.
Whereas other people who are more communication oriented in whatever, they might decide they're going to be a famous actor or whatever, they're going to develop that brain and the neurons that are going to support that kind of communication. So they'll be the ones more likely to connect with people more easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me a bit more about on this the way the brain develops then on how you're saying that on the different environments that people might be in, and they're trying to build rapport with their colleagues or whatever they're up to at that time.
Well, I've read all different research on it, and I recently was reading a book by an Australian woman who'd done a lot of research. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. I'm happy to send that to you. Because there was a lot of like the female brain versus the male brain, saying that one half of the brain is more, female oriented, more communication oriented, and the other half is the more analytical side of the brain, which they tend to call male. Her research is showing that it's not really about whether you're male or female. That's just a label on the brain. But it's more about the fact that whatever you're really interested in as a child and right from an early age, that's the kind of brain you're going to develop.
Right.
So if a girl is really interested in maths, she will still develop that analytical type brain. So there's a bit of a debate whether because you've got a masculine brain, you'll go towards that kind of career naturally, or whether because you're interested in that, you actually develop the brain that will actually help you with that. And because we're going to develop, recent research around neurology is showing that we can develop new neurons till the day we die, whereas they used to think it entropied. Whereas now you can develop them till the day you die. As long as you keep interested in something new and learning and engaging, you're going to keep developing your brain forever. And well, not forever, but until you're dead. So you're going to keep changing the brain to adapt to what you're after.
Right.
So the more focus and intention and purpose you have for what you want to do in your life, that's the kind of brain you're going to develop.
Right. So you know how you said that depending on what you have an interest on from a young age, would that interest then be related to this thing that you spoke about, HILPS,
yes.
highest purpose, highest value?
Highest life priorities, yeah. Yes.
So just tell me a bit more about that then.
So depending on what you actually perceive you really want in your life, and they'll generally come from something you perceive you're missing. So if you're very young and you have a void in your life, so for example, someone may be from a very poor background, and a child may make the meaning in their mind that they really want nice things because they didn't have them growing up, then that child may consciously strive to master money and wealth creation. So they've got a void around having money and things because they perceive they didn't have enough. So they will then chase the skill set and knowledge they need to actually become maybe entrepreneurial, depending how much money they perceive they want. So someone who really is missing it will tend to really chase it in a big form. Someone else in that same family may make the meaning that they didn't miss out on anything because they had all the family they wanted. So they're not going to chase money. They'll just make sure they get a family. So they'll make sure they marry and have children, and their whole desire will be about keeping their family. For example, I know a young woman who the father left when she was quite young, so she has a real void around family. So she does whatever it takes to focus on keeping the family together. Right. So based on whatever meanings we're making as a child about what's important to us, we're then going to chase things that will fulfill that void for us. And as we actually age, the form of it will change. So someone might really think they want family, so then they will get married reasonably young, have children, and then the children grow up. Now they still want family, but they've already got the children grown up. So now they might become a teacher, and then they'll have the children to look after. They might become a social worker and then look after other people's families. So they'll tend to keep looking for family in some other form. So the form of the thing we're chasing changes. But generally what we're chasing is always there. Right. Until we make the meaning it's full and done, and then we'll just find a new void to chase, because we have an innate sort of thing inside us that's actually driving us to want to achieve. So then we need to create the thing we want to achieve. Right.
Oh, okay. So, so if, for example, you're in a sales situation where you're trying to sell to someone, then how do the two things link up there? Because you've got your highest value on one side, and then you've got this thing where you're actually trying to build that connection with that particular person in order to make the sale in a way. So would you say there's a difference there, or is that kind of interlinked to the highest values kind of side of stuff as well?
There's a direct relationship. So for a start with sales, I think this is my perception, I'm not a sales expert, but my perception from the sales work I've done and working with clients in sales is it's not about selling, it's about finding out if the person actually has the desire to buy the value you're offering. Right. So it's the perception, the angle that you're coming from with your intention is really important up front as well, because energetically the person will feel if you're trying to sell to them. So I always go from the concept of we need to establish fair exchange. Sure. Well, if I'm the salesperson, I can't really offer you fair exchange until I know what you're looking for. So in order for me to open up communication with you, some rapport skills are very valuable. So the first kind of rapport skills would be I would actually notice what energy you're in. So if you're quite an energetic looking person and I'm not, I need to crank my energy up before I even approach you. Okay, because you can kind of just tell by watching someone what their energetic state is. If you're a very quiet person and I'm a real hyper salesman, then I'm going to put you off like that. If I come up into your personal space, for example, and then I'm loud in your face, you're just going to run a mile. So it's about the observation of the client that you're wanting to work with, noticing what energy you're in, matching that energy first, and then asking how you might be able to help them, opening up a conversation with them. And then the HILP part comes in, the hierarchy of life priority part comes in, when we then have a conversation about like, what's important to you today, what are you looking for, how can I help you, how can I be of service. So you're actually offering like fair exchange in a sales situation. So it's about having an open conversation with the person about, you know, is there something I can help you with, you know, what are you looking for, what questions have you got, then what are you the questions that you would then engage the person with about what they want it for, what they want to get out of it, will be giving you the clues as to what their help is. So sometimes people will do so much research before they walk into a store. They'll tell you all about it, and you just have to tell them, you just have to say, well, when do you want it delivered? But other times they're just walking in, they haven't got a clue, and you need to steer them through kind of a research project as to find out what's important to them, so that you can match the service or product you're selling to give them what they want, and help them see that link.
So that's kind of now touching on to like what we would in the business world relate to as your target audience, for example, knowing their needs and understanding what they want, and then being able to figure out what they want in order to give them that. And so that's that. Would you say that the question, because you said the research, the questioning side of it is quite important for establishing rapport in that kind of context?
Yeah, so they feel heard. Otherwise, you're telling them what they want. And one thing I know is there's no one on the planet who wants to be told what to do. Because you're straight away going to break rapport because you're telling them what they want rather than asking them what they want. So I think that's a really critical thing, that people say, this is what you want. Like, what's your instant reaction is to go, how would you know? Who do you think you are to tell me what I want? So you're going to go straight to that you're instantly going to bring up the shutters. It's kind of like, you know, when you see on the movies where the bank robber and you push the button and the big glass thing comes down. It's a bit like that. If you start telling people what they want, that's what you'll get.
So that's a really good way to break rapport.
Really good way to break rapport is start telling people what they want and what they should do. So if you could just maybe share a bit more on that, on the side of breaking rapport. It's like, you know, because obviously building it is probably the harder part, but breaking it could be quite easy to do, for, you know. So what are the kind of things that a person should watch out for in order to not break rapport? Like maintain rapport. So it's you've just got to watch body language quite a lot, and also people's tone and attention. So if you know, and the energy they're actually responding to you in your question. So if you're in your own little world and you're not actually aware of the other person, you're now talking about something they don't give a darn about. So now you'll notice their eyes are wandering, they're giving you very short answers back, they're looking away more, you know, turning away from you physically, like checking their watch, trying to get out of there. Like, if you're not looking for the clues that they're not interested, then that's your problem, not theirs, because they're going to work out how to get away one way or another. So to maintain rapport, it's like, if you notice that they're not interested, then you've actually just got to go and talk about something different and ask them what they're interested in. Classic example is if you're talking to someone and you say, have you got kids? And they say, yeah, I've got kids. And so you assume children should be the most important thing in everyone's life because your children are the most important thing in your life. And then you just start prattling on around about their children, and they're just going, yeah, I've got two. And you go, oh yeah, a boy or a girl? They go, one boy, one girl. Oh, what are their names? Bill and Mary. If you're getting that kind of answer, that's a clear indicator that children are not their highest life priority. So it's like you've got to tune into their responses, their energy, their body language,
how they're behaving.
How they're behaving. And if you don't keep control of the conversation, then you will lose that person. That you'll actually break rapport. So it's about listening to them and saying, you know, so what do you do in your spare time? It would be a question, to be a clue. Or tell me about your business if they appear to be an entrepreneur or business oriented person. Or what do you like most about your job? You know, so you've got to come up with clever questions that are going to open up a conversation so you can actually find out what really is important to them.
So it's very, very important to make sure that you're present in that moment to what the feedback you're getting from that person, because that allows you to kind of just adapt, be like water, flow in that context. Do you reckon then let's get a bit woo here as well.
Sure.
So do you reckon there's some sort of energy exchange going on when you're in that kind of situation? Like you said, there could be people who, they're giving that kind of not interested in talking. So they're energetically, they're different, but the people are more warm and open. That whole kind of thing about what's going on at that stage, is that more of is that some sort of chemical thing going on there? Or is there energetic exchange going on there? What would you say on that side of things?
That's a nice big question, that one, isn't it? I would see there's two levels. So when you say, is it chemical, what we'll say in our workshops is, well, if it's a male, female, or a sexually attractive partner that you're actually with, whether it's male, female, male, female,
Right.
whatever, and the people are in the prime breeding age, we call it, if you're in that range, and then there actually would be some chemical stuff going on, and that's because of because we're physically an animal, then that the survival instinct to breed and reproduce is going on at that level.
Right.
I think on a different level, there's an energy matrix that we play in, because you talk to anyone, you can feel the energy in a room sometimes when you walk in and there's been an argument, and you can kind of go, whoa, what's going on here? There's like this argument happened, the negative vibes are kind of coming out.
Yeah.
So I think there's absolutely an energy field that's at play here. And so when you actually gain rapport with someone, it's like it's almost like that's relaxed and you can actually get in closer with each other. But people walking too close to you, invading your personal space, I think that's very much that energetic push-pull.
Right.
And I think that positive negative push-pull is always in the air, and then depending on whether or not you're meeting what's important to the other person or not, they'll either relax that guard or they'll put up the shield.
Right.
So because you're either attractive to them or not, whether it's that animal sexual one or not, in offering them value of some sort.
Right.
Because like if you've got no value to the other person, why waste each other's time?
Yeah.
Walk away and put your energy in with someone else who actually wants the exchange with you. So I think that fair exchange is like, you know what, we've just got nothing in common, so let's just let it go. Nice to meet you. And it could be that at that time you just didn't find the thing you had in common.
Right. So what it sounds like there is that it comes down to a lot to do with what we're as an individual interested, or what our intention is in that moment in time when we're trying to communicate with someone. Because like you said, if we're going in there thinking this person can add value to my life, then there's probably some sort of deeper conversation taking place there. But if we're feeling that, no, this person's not going to add value, doesn't even match anything about me, we're going to try to kind of push away from it. That's a really interesting dynamic there on that side of things. And I suppose what I'm trying to get to with that is, how would an individual then know whether they want to create that rapport with that person or not?
It comes back to your intention for the connection.
Yeah.
So if your intention is to be of service, you will tend to find out how you might be of service. So you're making the conversation about the other person. So you're exploring.
Yeah.
Whereas if you make it about yourself, like what can I sell to the other person in whatever form, like we're all salespeople, there's no doubt. So it's what's your intention? Is your intention to see how you could be of service?
Yeah.
And then you're making the choice of whether you would be of service.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. So you're going to be the one consciously trying to create rapport and maintain it in order to have a meaningful enough conversation to find out if there's any value.
Right.
But if your intention is just to, entertain yourself or whatever, you're not going to be able to establish the same level of rapport.
But then how does that tie back into the when you get those moments of instant rapport, when you just instantly build rapport with people, is that then... Is that a combination of some energetic stuff going on, or is that just what is that like when you end up having instant rapport with people? What would you say that is then?
I guess I'd need to have a more specific example, I think, Jatinder, because there are some people who are kind of charismatic, who tend to be attractive to people, like they just seem to come to them.
Yeah.
So the energetic push-pull is an interesting thing that you've brought up. I guess my take on that would be, when people are actually coming from I'm going to use the word humbly empowered space is the best way I can describe it, which is that space of grace, I guess, which is the middle space that I was talking about earlier. When they're coming from that space and they're not seeing themselves as better than or worse than or less than, when they're in that middle space, they are an attractive person. So they're energetically attractive in that state. Yeah, they're in neutral. They're kind of curious. They're grateful for the world. They're operating in an open-hearted kind of space. That energy is attractive. So if you get yourself into that space through gratitude and get yourself to that space of gratitude, then you're energetically attractive. So they're the people who will tend to be able to get instant rapport. And they're not doing it on purpose, because then if you're trying to do it on purpose, you now put yourself into what we call an overdog position. So if you're playing overdog position, which is kind of the look at me, I'm better than position, what happens is you'll attract humbling circumstances. So something's going to bring you down. In Australia, we call it the tall poppy syndrome. You're going to get cut off at the knees, we say. If you act like you're full of yourself, someone's going to humble you. So there's that space. So if you go in and you're like that, then you're not attractive to people who are in that humble space because they're perceiving you like that. Okay, but someone who's playing underdog or less than will be attracted to the overdog because they're thinking that person's got something I haven't got. Right, so it's going to appear like rapport, but it's actually being underdog to that person. Right, so and the drawback to playing underdog is you're going to stay juvenile and dependent, so you're not actually acknowledging your own where you're empowered. Okay, and we mean that like you're actually playing that. It's not you're not acting it, if that makes sense. So because if I want to learn from someone, I'm just going to stay really humble because I just want to get everything I can from that person because I have learning very high on my priorities. Okay? But that's not me acting underdog, like where I think they are way better than me.
Got it. So that means then your state of mind is very important when you're in that kind of state, because like you said, if you're going in there with this kind of over-empowering kind of personality, it comes across. But if you're just going in there like just neutral, it's like, ooh, what's this all about? That's
That's where
really
you're going in with the intention of fair exchange. Because you're not thinking you're better than, you're not thinking you're going to rip someone off, you're not going to think you're going to tell them how to live their life. You're just going in and going, we're human beings in this world, in this matrix, connecting.
So that's really interesting, because what I'm seeing so far then is that you've got, in order to create rapport, you've got your kind of state of mind, where you are with your state of mind. You've got your kind of, like you said, values is what you're looking for in life. And then you've got your intent. You've then got the whole kind of trustability, likability kind of thing, where you're trying to build that rapport with people so they get to like and trust you, so they can open up more to you. So there seems to be like a certain flow, a certain pattern of that can actually be followed as a way to teach people how to be in rapport with others. So when you get to you got the trust side, then you got to ask the questions as well to figure out what they want, their needs are. Then you can see of how you can be of service to them with, like what you said, with the fair exchange side of things. And so am I correct in assuming that if you got the fair exchange stuff going on, you're more likely to get a bit more of a collaboration going on in that dialogue, in that conversation?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Because I can see like steps forming, or is there anything, or do you say there's something really deeper that's missing in order to create deep rapport, for example?
I think deep rapport is just about that ongoing time spent with the person, so that you just get to understand them more, and retain what's important to the other person, so that you can actually share again in the future. So if you can't hang on to that information in some way, and then you come back and you're asking the same person the same questions about, tell me about your kids, I forget about them, and they're the most important thing to the other person, then you won't ever get into that deeper rapport. And chances are you're probably not meant to, because I think deep rapport is really that you've got a certain amount of alignment of your hierarchy of priorities.
The values matching.
You're not going to, I can't see I would ever get into really deep rapport with someone whose priorities and mine were completely different.
Yeah.
So that's we call it the master key in the work we do. So that's like the master key to communication and relationships is when you can see enough overlap in those hierarchies for you to have enough in common to be able to support each other, and also enough difference to actually keep it interesting.
Yeah,
because if you were identical to each other in a relationship, then one of you is superfluous because you've got nothing to grow or learn from the other person because you're just like you.
Right.
So that would feel like you were kind of dating your twin, you know, it's too close, it's not actually interesting. So we're designed to, like my perception anyway, is that we've kind of designed to grow and learn and overcome challenges and connect. And so if we haven't got that challenge, if it feels too comfortable, then we're not going to sustain a long-term relationship because it'll feel like they're too clingy because they'll feel like yourself. So you're going to push away from that kind of relationship, whether it's work or whether it's a romantic relationship or friendship. If the other person just wants to be like you all the time and it feels identical, you'll start feeling like they're a stalker almost.
Right. So there seems to be, it's interesting because there seems to be almost like there's a fine line, there's like a line, and if you're on that line, it's kind of in flow, in balance, but as soon as you start to cross that line, you start to eat into the other values or not values and things like that. So for people who may be thinking that, isn't that being selfish? What would you say to that?
When you're saying selfish, what specific bit are you talking about?
Like, for example, you say, well, if we go to a networking event, I'm going there because my intention is to, you know, sell my product to a person, but I need to find the people who are interested in it, that kind of thing. Or because it seems like, like I said, there seems to be like a fine line. It just depends on which side of that line you're on. So if doesn't it appear that sometimes it could be considered to be selfish, or is just selfish just a different word for that? What do you think?
So to me, selfish would be if I'm going in with the intention to get all I could. Okay, without giving.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So if the intention is that I'm going in to be of service to them and receive fair exchange, right, then that isn't selfish from that perspective.
Okay.
But there's not a single person on the planet who's not selfish in respect of everyone's chasing what's on their hierarchy of priorities. So we all are. There's no one who gets up to try to live anyone else's life. Everyone's just trying to live their own life. So we're all going to be selfish. But if we're selfish, you'll find the universe corrects us because you'll find instantly you won't get rapport. Like if you're all about you'll notice people start avoiding you because that's going into that overdog position again, and it's going to get humbled.
Right.
Equally so, the people who just always want to help everyone, like, oh, can I help you? And they're kind of playing that underdog position, starts feeling like a doormat and a bother and an anchor, and you don't really want to be around them either. So if they're in a pity party state, or, you know, being, oh, you know everything, you know, and they're clingy to you, you don't want to be in that state either. So that's why I say it's when you're going in with that intention of fair exchange. And how can you be of service? Because, like, I don't want to actually work with clients who aren't ready for the work we do. I don't want to be of disservice to them for the sake of money. So that's not going to be sustainable for your business. So you're always wanting to go in with that sense of where's the fair exchange going to be. So I think the universe course corrects us. If we go into overdog or underdog for long, we're going to get equilibrated back into the middle.
Got it. So it's like you said, coming from that space of humility and what was the word you used earlier on?
I said humbly empowered.
That's right, that's right. Okay. In continuation with what you're saying then, what about this thing about like value stacking then? So, because one of the things we want to do, we're slightly like touch into the kind of digital space as well as to what's going on in the online world with all this connection and influence and things. So, you know, what's your thoughts on like value stacking then, where you might put something together where you keep adding loads and loads of values to say, this is what you're going to get, right? And then, but it's kind of done in a way to just get the sale, or, you know, even though that you may get all that value as well, but how would you then determine if something is of value, or how much value that is actually adding to us? What would you say? Yeah,
I think I understand what you mean. You're saying like when you're doing online marketing, you're saying you get this plus this plus this and the steak knives kind of thing. I think all marketing has to be polarized.
Okay. Yep.
It has to be tipped to one side. It has to have exaggeration in it.
Right.
Because marketing is actually trying to get you to buy.
Yeah.
And I believe it serves.
Yep.
So I'm not against that kind of marketing, because I think people get woken up with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get sucked into buying something because of very clever marketing, you get a lesson.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So they get your money and you get a lesson that you wasted your money.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep doing it, then eventually you'll wake up, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think the more aware we are and the more we can step back and look at delayed gratification, for example, to say, do we really want that? I think the wiser we are around our money.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting money lessons.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I think from the point of view of the value you stack up is going to appeal to people according to their HILP, their hierarchy of life priorities. So that's actually going to be or not. Right. So you're either going to line up value there or you're not. So you've got a real challenge because everyone on the planet's got a unique HILP.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but fortunately there's billions on the planet, so they're going to percentage-wise, so it's absolutely a numbers game.
Yeah.
So I think something you're offering as your first or second tier offer may be valuable to someone, and then you're offering on the third one and the same person's going, I don't care about that. So you've got a real challenge there to actually find the path to what people want. So you may have a danger that you keep stacking up, and it might be the last people that go, I don't want that, and they've forgotten about the first three pieces of good value you've offered.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a challenge.
Right.
The online marketing space is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really like you got the whole kind of, like you said, you need to know your target audience. You could use the terminologies. It's like if you're online, you could say target audience. If you're offline, it's one-to-one kind of thing. Understanding their needs, what they need, what they require, but then being able to serve them, but coming from a space of fair exchange. That's what I'm getting as the main kind of teaching that you're bringing is that whole fair exchange, that balance of how you're actually serving people and how you, even when you connect with people.
I was just thinking earlier, you were talking about the energetic exchange.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about the internet, it's a pretty amazing space, isn't it? And, we can be connected to the internet anywhere on the planet pretty much now because of the satellite connections and stuff. That's all energy-based stuff. We're made of energy. Like, everything's based with energy. So I think actually, even in the digital space, setting the intention for fair exchange still would project energetically.
Right, got you.
So I think that if you're looking at anything, I think probably going, well, who is my ideal client base? And energetically, how would I connect with them? What would I offer them that would feel of real value to them? And what type of offer? Like, how should the offer be made to them? So if they're a lower income, does it need to be made so they can pay it off over time? If they're higher income, do they want it personally hand delivered? Like, what is it that would appeal to that audience in how it's delivered? But at the core is the actual service or product of value to people. If you're going to, I believe anyway, if you're going to take some, pretty dodgy product and dress it up somehow and it's actually not of real value, but you made it look good, and then the clients start buying it and it's crumbs, it's crappy. It doesn't take long in this world of social media for you to get smashed.
Right. Exactly.
So I can't see that would be sustainable. So I think the absolute core to it is actually creating a product or service that is a proven method or service, that a product that people actually want. And then it's about, how do I tell more people about this, because it's actually really good. Like, look at these reviews. If you're getting genuine reviews from people and you're genuinely offering something of value, I believe that you would be able to get it out there, because social media can be as equally powerful.
That's right. I mean, that like nice leads on to the whole kind of thing about integrity, because you say that you got the humble space, the integrity space, adding value to people's life, having fair exchange. All these things are worth knowing and understanding, because it's not just in one particular field. It's like it goes across the board in, like you said, sales and relationships. In like you said, you're teaching children, and the rapport there as well. Okay, that's an interesting one. So when you link it back to when you were teaching, and you had a group of 30 children, for example, all doing different things and all different things going on. What did you do to kind of maintain that space then in a kind of rapport way with some children?
I think it's probably a bit different when you're instructing children from the point of view of you're actually teaching. When I say children, they're really young adults, because I worked with teenagers predominantly. It's more about you. In the first instance, you've got to use your authority position, right? And you've got to actually hold your ground, hold the space, so that they know you're not mucking around, of thing. Then over time, you actually get to know them as individuals. You've got to let them understand that you care. So once they understand you care, then they'll kind of care about you. So that's a journey for the first few months of teaching in each year, and then next year you get a new batch of kids and you do it all again. So there's that period of time where they've actually got to get to know you and you've got to get to know them. So that's where you get around while they're working, you have chats while we're waiting outside and they're lining up, you're talking about what they did on the weekend and you're finding out what's important to them. So they understand, you connect at a human level in order to create that rapport with them. And then when you're actually needing to instruct, you'll just stand out the front and be silent and hold the space, and they'll eventually just come into group rapport and then you move on. So group rapport is actually about holding the space and setting your intention. So if as a teacher I make my intention about me getting through the curriculum, right, then I'll just talk and look at the blackboard or whiteboard or whatever, and I won't even know what's going on. So if my intention is to help the students learn, then I'm going to stay in rapport with them and stay connected with them.
And that leads into, I suppose, when you're teaching the adults now, when you do your seminars, your group training stuff, that's like a continuation of that, isn't it? About creating that intention to help them out.
Absolutely, and in the workshops we're very much wanting interaction with people, and we also believe that they learn from each other. Like we're not the fond of all knowledge. People in the room actually get really great bits of wisdom from each other. So when we're running those workshops, that's why we prefer to keep them smaller. At this stage, I mean, it'd be nice to have 100 people, but then we wouldn't get the same connection, so it turns into a lecture rather than a teaching opportunity. So we prefer the interactive teaching opportunities. And we actually know from that people get into rapport much more quickly. Another thing I think with getting into rapport is, like, you're coming from that humbly empowered kind of space. You're kind of open to being human. Like, you don't know it all, Everyone burps and farts, basically. You're in a human space. And I think that's also about gaining rapport with people is actually looking at who the people are and how you want to be with them, how you want to relate to them.
Right. And it was interesting, the point you made before when you were with the students. You said that you have to show them the authority. Because in the online space we've got like this whole concept of authority marketing, where you show your proof and evidence of what you've learned or how, if whether you're an author or a speaker or something like that. So bringing that across would you say, is that something that helps with people in terms of influence and when you're actually building rapport? So if you checked in like, I'm an author, a coach, or this, that, and the other, how does that influence the rapport side?
You're going to have the same challenge, because the people who put academic people or learned people on a pedestal, so they're putting themselves in the pit, so they're actually like subordinating to the authority, like we do say for doctors or lawyers, we might subordinate to that authority. So those people it's going to influence, because they're actually in that gullible space, right? Whereas someone else who has had really bad experience with that form of authority is going to dismiss it. They're going to say, what would he know? So, and then there's the extra complexity is that some people are very visual and other people are very detail oriented. So they're going to want to know, what university did you get that degree from? And who were your professors, almost. To the other people who won't even read that bit, they'll just, that's their creds, and they'll just move on and go, show me the pictures of what you're offering me. And does it come with steak knives? So you've got, again, as you said earlier, once you really understand your niche market, then you can actually decide how complex
Yeah.
or simple to make some of that information. And I think there's always value in your marketing to have the extra creds somewhere buried away.
Yes.
Because the detailed person will go chasing it.
Yeah.
They'll go, who is this person? Google you and really track it down.
Yeah.
So that's your general, like I see it as you've got to go from the people who like the big picture stuff to the people who like the detail, then back to the big picture.
Yes.
So there's so many formulas for that, as I'm sure you're 100% aware of. It's again, which formula will best suit your market.
That's right, yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned, which was the whole kind of community element of it, which is like your tribe, as they say, your vibe attracts your tribe kind of thing, right? So, and you said that in that kind of environment where you got that community, I suppose it's because of the like-mindedness and they're all kind of trying to get to that same place. It allows them to then connect and have this, like you said, group rapport, right? Okay, is there anything else you wanted to add to the kind of group rapport side of stuff?
Again, there's learned skills for that. If you're going to be, say, a platform presenter, there's certainly learned skills about group rapport where you actually focus on learning foveal vision and how to take the whole audience in, and just like literally to breathe and pace it and things to actually match the audience and start making eye connection, and also the whole matching and mirroring with your body language with who's in the audience. So there's actually learned skills with that. I'm not sure how you'd apply those to the digital space. It'd be interesting.
It'd be very difficult because you have to. That in that one-to-one space, so you can't see who you're actually dealing with. So that's where the prep work would come in. Like you said, understanding your target market, what they're after, what their needs are, and then adapting your message.
Short of actually having interactive webinars with people or something like that. I'm yet to understand how you would do that. So certainly online's got some limitations as far as building rapport from that perspective, as in with the group. And I think probably, actually recently I was talking to a lady and she was saying, like, online, you've got to talk to the person as if it's one-to-one.
That's right,
So it's really like, I'm talking to you. This is talking to you, not to a group even. I'm making you special is kind of more how they tend to want to hear it. It's
just interesting because it's like just having that one-to-one kind of mindset, but your message is going out to many. It's like, it's really interesting to understand all that side of it as well, because like you said, the whole thing about tonality, the whole kind of visuals, the sound, all that video that you create online, or the message, the blogs you create, all that kind of stuff has elements of what we've been speaking about here. So Helen, one of the questions I want to ask you was then about this whole kind of thing about culture. Like you say, you're from Australia, you've come down to London, and you meet people from different parts of the world. How do you feel that the whole kind of rapport building stuff works when it comes to different cultures?
I think it's really important to be respectful of different cultures, because as you said, it can go out anywhere in the world, what you're putting out there. So I personally think that if you're coming from that humble space, again, that your culture's not better than anyone else's, and that you're connecting more from an open heart and human space. I think you would tend to naturally keep cultural biases out of it, and avoid insulting other cultures. Certainly there's a whole lot of research, if you're targeting a specific market and it's not your culture, that you would need to do to be respectful of other people's cultures. And we certainly are challenged by that somewhat in the work we do, because we have to be careful, because there are religious people that our work may not align with completely. Having said that, recently been studying some of the Indian philosophers, the ancient ones, and I'm just going, wow, our work's overlapping so much of so much of this. It's just a new language we need for that middle space that I talked about earlier, but which I had no idea of. So it's really interesting for me how the cultures met. I think that you also could do your head in if you think you can meet everyone. So I think this world is a very big place with a whole lot of people, and I think it's about coming from an abundance mentality. As long as you're being respectful in whatever you're putting out online, then I think you will find your market. And I don't know that I think that respect is going to cross the cultural barriers, I guess, more than anything else, like respect and gratitude. So you're putting out stuff you're appreciative of, giving feedback to people, that you're grateful for what's happening. So I think that's probably the thing that would cross the cultural boundaries. And of course, you have to watch out because, we Aussies use a lot of slang, and I guess other cultures do as well. So just if you're putting stuff out on the internet, to be mindful of the slang you're using and whether other cultures would actually understand it. So probably getting a network to test some of what you're saying and writing before you actually put it out publicly would make good sense, I guess. So, and we've got such international cultures wherever we live these days, it wouldn't be hard to just find some people and say, can you read this, and see if any of it doesn't make sense.
That's right, yeah.
So I guess that's again coming back to that sense of respectful. Yeah. Just being respectful.
So now we've had loads of information. There's fantastic stuff. There's been some really good kind of insights in a different way. But the whole kind of thing about fair exchange, integrity, all those kind of things is very important. And the life values stuff that you mentioned is awesome as well. If the viewers want to find out more about you, what do they need to do? Or, how can they connect with you?
Sure. So our business is called Optimum Thinking, and we work with clients all over the world with Skype, and we also do go in person to do workshops and things as well. So they can just go to our website, which is optimumthinking.net. Very easy to find, because that's really what our whole business is about, is just helping people create an optimum thinking mindset so they can get out of, we say we want, if you're in positive thinking or negative thinking, you're actually in reaction. So we want to help you get out of reaction and get back into action. So that's where you're in that empowered state there as well. So easy. Just go online. All our details are online. And whichever country is closest to where they live is fine. They can just contact either of us.
Skype. So, report through Skype, right?
Skype's good. We use Skype, Zoom, whatever we need to do to get to people.
So, are there any last words that you want to just share on this whole topic of?
Just probably as a sideline for what you're saying before, probably what popped in my mind while you're talking was that I see there's a huge value for people to actually, because, let me backtrack a little bit, because people read words and there's no tone in the words unless it's a very clever writer. I think there's huge power in at least a short video so people can hear the tone of the person before they continue reading.
That's right.
So I think there's huge value there from the point of view of building rapport, and it's in through that video that the person's actually got the opportunity to make eye contact with the viewer as well. And also just their body language, and even like how they're dressing and things obviously is all part of it. And it's to me, one of the schools I worked at, I was in charge of developing the brand of the college, and I used to be called the brand Nazi. So, and it was because my attention to detail with the brand was really important. So I think if you, especially people with a limited budget for their sales and marketing, I think it's very, very important that you are so consistent with your branding and that attention to detail, which isn't in many people's natural flow. Like, it's actually hard work to find your own spelling mistakes for most of us. But that consistency of the brand is a way you actually can stay in rapport with your clients as well, because you're giving them what they expect from you. So the consistency in your brand, all your branding, all your languaging, consistency in the service delivery, all of those things are part of maintaining your rapport with your clients. Because once you're giving them unexpected things that are less than par, that's when you're going to break rapport with your clients. And some clients are very unforgiving. You'll get one go. Once you're not delivering the service you promised, they'll go elsewhere because someone else is slightly cheaper. So they're not going to stay loyal. So it's about, I think that's your real challenge with online, is how do you maintain the rapport with the client and keep that connection with the client over time.
Very valuable points here. Definitely.
So that was just what popped in as you were talking. So
that's
of some value too.
Definitely. No, that could then relates to I suppose in the offline space you got impact, isn't it? Like how you show up. And then online, that how you show up is actually your branding and the way you look online and how that looks. So that plays an influential part in, like you said, maintaining that rapport online.
I mean, you're showing up in people's own homes on their phone, in their personal space. Are you bothering to, pay a bit of attention to detail? Like, do you care the fact, because you're literally in a sense invading that person's space, aren't you?
That's right.
So how are you showing up as this person in this person's space is hugely valuable. At least it doesn't matter if you put your deodorant on or not, but there's still a whole lot of other things you need to pay some attention to.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So,
Cool.
okay, so thank you, Helen, thank you very much
My
for your
pleasure.
time. It's been very insightful, and wish you all the best, and thank you very much.
All the best with the project. Hope it goes really, really well, Jatinda.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sure
you.
it'll be of value to people to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.